Hey there, book lovers and freedom seekers. Welcome back to Olivia's Summaries, where we dive deep into life-changing books and turn their wisdom into bite-sized insights, always with a splash of fun. Today, we're exploring a book that's all about embracing true freedom, the kind that comes from within. It's The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, a bestseller that's taken the world by storm, sparking conversations in over 30 countries. Let's talk about the authors first. Ichiro Kishimi is a renowned philosopher and expert in Adlerian psychology, a revolutionary approach to understanding life and relationships pioneered by Alfred Adler. His co-author, Fumitake Koga, is an award-winning writer who specializes in simplifying complex ideas and making them relatable for everyday readers. Together, they've crafted a book that's part psychology, part philosophy, and totally transformative. What makes this book unique is its structure. It's written as a dialogue between a wise philosopher and a skeptical young seeker. This back-and-forth format brings Adler's teachings to life in a way that's easy to follow and incredibly engaging. It's like eavesdropping on a profound conversation that's equal parts challenging and inspiring. The big idea? Your happiness doesn't depend on your past, other people's opinions, or external circumstances. Instead, it's about having the courage to live authentically, take responsibility for your choices, and stop seeking validation. By the end of this summary, you'll discover how to break free from the chains of approval, rewrite the narrative of your life, and step into the bold, unapologetic version of yourself. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. The first chapter, Night 1, The Foundation of Adlerian Psychology, of the book The Courage to be Disliked, introduces readers to the transformative principles of Adlerian psychology. Through an engaging dialogue between a philosopher and a skeptical young man, this chapter challenges deeply rooted beliefs about how our past defines us and explores the radical idea that our present choices, not past experiences, shape our lives. The philosopher begins by addressing a common misconception that people are products of their past. Traditional psychology, especially Freudian theory, emphasizes the lasting impact of childhood experiences and traumas. Adlerian psychology, however, rejects this view. According to Adler, the past is not a fixed force that determines our future. Instead, it is the meaning we assign to past events and the goals we pursue in the present that dictate our behavior. The philosopher explains this through a relatable example. Someone who says, "I can't trust others because I was betrayed in the past." While this reasoning feels logical, Adlerian psychology views it as a way of avoiding the risk of vulnerability. The betrayal isn't the cause of mistrust, it's the justification for choosing not to trust. The focus shifts from external causes to internal goals, highlighting our ability to decide how we live now. This perspective ties into Adler's concept of teleology, which emphasizes goal-oriented behavior. Unlike causality, where past events are seen as driving current actions, teleology argues that our present actions are shaped by what we aim to achieve. For instance, a shy person might attribute their shyness to childhood bullying. Adlerian psychology would say that their shyness is not caused by the bullying, but is a strategy they are using now to avoid potential social rejection. This shift in thinking empowers individuals to recognize that their behavior is not dictated by the past, but by their current goals and choices. One of the boldest ideas in this chapter is the notion of the illusion of trauma. While Adler acknowledges the pain and impact of traumatic events, he rejects the belief that trauma permanently defines a person's life. Two people might experience the same hardship, such as losing a job or facing rejection, but respond in entirely different ways. One might use the experience as motivation for growth, while the other might feel stuck, using the event as a reason to avoid future risks. The difference lies in how they interpret the experience and what they aim to achieve. The young man struggles with this concept, arguing that trauma feels like an undeniable influence. The philosopher counters that although trauma can deeply affect us, it does not have to control us. We have the power to rewrite the stories we tell ourselves, but this requires courage, the courage to confront our excuses and take full responsibility for our lives. The chapter also introduces the idea that happiness is a choice. True happiness, according to Adler, comes from taking responsibility for your actions and letting go of blame. This means not blaming others, your circumstances, or even your past. It involves rejecting the need for external validation and recognizing that fulfillment is created internally. Happiness isn't something to be found. It's something to be actively chosen by embracing the freedom to live authentically. As the chapter concludes, the philosopher invites the young man to consider the possibility of change. Living a life unshackled by past experiences or the opinions of others demands bravery. It requires challenging deeply ingrained beliefs, embracing discomfort, and stepping into a life of self-responsibility. The young man remains skeptical, yet intrigued, leaving the dialogue unresolved and setting the stage for further exploration of Adler's life-changing ideas. This opening chapter lays the groundwork for a transformative journey. It confronts readers with the empowering truth that they are not prisoners of their past. Instead, they are creators of their present and future, capable of choosing happiness and freedom by taking full responsibility for their lives. In Night 2, The Concept of Lifestyle, the second chapter of The Courage to be Disliked, the conversation deepens as the philosopher introduces the concept of lifestyle, a central idea in Adlerian psychology. The young man is once again skeptical, but through a rich dialogue, the philosopher explains how each person's lifestyle, essentially the way they approach life and the world, shapes their choices, behavior, and ultimately their happiness. The philosopher begins by discussing the idea that lifestyle is not something fixed at birth, but is formed early in life, influenced by a combination of personal experiences, family dynamics, and societal expectations. However, contrary to popular belief, lifestyle is not determined by external circumstances. It is the internal framework, the beliefs, and the choices that individuals make about how they relate to the world. In Adlerian terms, a person's lifestyle is the unique way they strive toward their goals and the strategies they develop to handle life's challenges. Adler's view of lifestyle rejects the deterministic notion that people are forever shaped by their upbringing or environment. The philosopher challenges the young man's assumption that one's childhood or past failures define the path one must take in life. Instead, Adlerian psychology suggests that people have the freedom to change their lifestyle at any point in their lives by re-examining the beliefs they hold and the goals they are pursuing. The young man finds this difficult to accept, especially when it comes to the impact of family dynamics. He argues that many individuals are shaped by the roles they were given in their families, roles that can lead to patterns of behavior that are difficult to break. The philosopher acknowledges this, but counters that while family influences are significant, they are not deterministic. The key to understanding lifestyle is recognizing that we are not passive recipients of life's circumstances. We are active participants in the creation of our own life story. By examining and reshaping the goals we are pursuing and the beliefs that underpin our actions, we can break free from old patterns and create a new, more empowered lifestyle. A powerful part of this chapter is the idea that lifestyle is a choice, even if it's a choice we're not always aware of. Most people, according to the philosopher, operate on autopilot, adhering to patterns and behaviors shaped by past experiences. These unconscious patterns are not set in stone, however. Through self-awareness and conscious choice, individuals can reshape their lifestyle by identifying their current goals and evaluating whether they align with their deeper desires and values. The philosopher illustrates this point with an example of two people who may have experienced similar childhood trauma but respond to it in very different ways. One person might develop a lifestyle based on seeking approval and validation from others, while another might adopt a more independent, self-reliant approach. The difference between these two responses lies in the goals they have set for themselves. The first person may be driven by the unconscious goal of gaining external validation to compensate for feelings of inadequacy, while the second person may choose to seek inner fulfillment, rejecting the need for external approval. The conversation also touches on the idea of social interest, which Adler believes is central to a healthy lifestyle. This concept refers to an individual's ability to empathize with and contribute to the well-being of others. A person with a high level of social interest is someone who does not just focus on their own happiness, but also strives to improve the collective happiness of their community. The philosopher argues that the more we develop a sense of social interest, the more our lifestyle becomes aligned with deeper values of connection, contribution, and mutual respect. By the end of the chapter, the young man begins to understand that the lifestyle is not something passive or predetermined, but a dynamic process shaped by the choices we make every day. He is confronted with the realization that he has more control over his life than he previously believed. This shift in understanding is liberating. If we are not bound by our past or our family roles, then we have the freedom to create a life that is in alignment with our true desires. This chapter firmly establishes the idea that lifestyle is a set of choices, shaped by our goals, our beliefs, and our relationships with others. It is not something fixed or determined by past events. This is a powerful and empowering concept. We are not doomed to repeat old patterns or live within the confines of a fixed identity. We can choose to reimagine our lives, pursue new goals, and create a lifestyle that reflects our true potential and aspirations. This understanding opens the door to lasting personal growth and transformation, making it possible to live more authentically and freely. In Night 3, The Importance of Taking Responsibility, the third chapter of The Courage to be Disliked, the philosopher delves deeper into the concept of personal responsibility. The chapter revolves around the powerful idea that taking responsibility for one's life is the key to emotional freedom and personal growth. The young man, still skeptical, is challenged to reconsider his beliefs about blame, victimhood, and the control he has over his own happiness. The conversation begins with the philosopher explaining that true freedom comes from accepting responsibility for every aspect of our lives, our emotions, our decisions, and the outcomes we experience. This is not to say that everything in life is within our control, but rather that we always have the power to choose how we respond to external circumstances. Blaming others or external events for our feelings and actions keeps us stuck in a passive role, where we feel like victims of life rather than active participants. The philosopher challenges the young man to reconsider the way he sees his relationships, particularly with his family. The young man argues that his family's expectations and behavior have shaped his feelings of inadequacy and resentment. He feels that his lack of success and personal fulfillment is the result of the way he was raised. The philosopher responds by emphasizing that while we can acknowledge external influences, blaming others for our feelings and choices only perpetuates our suffering. We are the ones who ultimately decide how to respond to our past and present circumstances. To live with full responsibility means accepting that our reactions, thoughts, and actions are our own, even when external factors are difficult or challenging. This chapter brings to light the concept of separation of tasks, which is central to Adlerian psychology. The philosopher explains that in any relationship or situation, there are two kinds of tasks: our own tasks and the tasks of others. When we take responsibility for our own tasks, such as our emotions, decisions, and behaviors, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to control or change others. Often, people fall into the trap of trying to manage other people's tasks, attempting to control how they feel or behave, which leads to unnecessary conflict and frustration. The key to emotional freedom lies in recognizing what tasks are truly ours to manage and which belong to others. The young man struggles with this idea, particularly when it comes to the influence of others in his life. He feels that his happiness is often dependent on how others treat him, whether his friends approve of him, whether his family supports him, or whether his colleagues acknowledge his efforts. The philosopher helps him see that while it's natural to care about others' opinions, we are not responsible for how others behave or think. Instead, our responsibility is to live authentically, make choices aligned with our own values, and stop relying on external validation to feel worthy or successful. A pivotal moment in the chapter comes when the philosopher explains the importance of freedom through responsibility. The more we take responsibility for our own lives, the less we depend on others or circumstances to define our happiness. When we stop blaming others for our dissatisfaction or unhappiness, we begin to reclaim our power. This leads to true freedom, the freedom to live life on our own terms without being shackled by the need for approval or validation from the outside world. The philosopher also stresses that taking responsibility does not mean taking on unnecessary guilt or self-punishment. Responsibility is about recognizing our agency in how we approach life, rather than adopting a mindset of victimhood or passivity. It involves owning the fact that our lives are shaped by the choices we make, and that we always have the ability to make different choices. Taking responsibility is not about perfection. It's about acknowledging that we have the power to shape our reality, no matter how difficult the circumstances may be. By the end of the chapter, the young man begins to realize that the way forward lies in taking full responsibility for his life. This realization comes with a sense of liberation. When we take ownership of our emotions and decisions, we stop being controlled by external factors. We are free to live according to our values, make choices that align with our true desires, and take action toward personal growth. This shift from victimhood to responsibility is an essential step toward creating a life of greater authenticity and fulfillment. Through this dialogue, the chapter highlights a central tenet of Adlerian psychology. Personal responsibility is the foundation of a meaningful and empowered life. It is through accepting responsibility, not for others' actions or circumstances, but for our own choices and reactions, that we can begin to break free from limitations and create a life that reflects our true potential. This powerful lesson sets the stage for greater emotional freedom, deeper self-awareness, and the courage to live authentically. In Night 4, The Power of Self-Acceptance, the fourth chapter of The Courage to be Disliked, the philosopher delves into one of the most transformative ideas in Adlerian psychology, self-acceptance. This chapter highlights the importance of embracing ourselves as we are, without constantly seeking validation or striving to meet external expectations. Through an insightful dialogue with the young man, the philosopher explores how accepting ourselves, flaws and all, is the key to living a fulfilling and authentic life. The conversation begins with the philosopher challenging the common belief that self-acceptance is conditional, that we must earn the right to accept ourselves by achieving success, meeting societal standards, or receiving approval from others. The young man insists that true self-acceptance can only come once we've achieved something significant or received recognition for our efforts. He believes that it's our accomplishments that define our worth. The philosopher counters this by explaining that self-acceptance does not depend on external achievements or approval. Instead, it is about recognizing that we are inherently worthy, regardless of our circumstances, success, or failures. The philosopher introduces the concept of unconditional self-acceptance, which means accepting ourselves as we are without the need for external validation or comparison. This form of self-acceptance is not about being complacent or avoiding growth. It's about acknowledging that, at every moment, we are doing the best we can with the resources and knowledge we have. It's about embracing our imperfections and understanding that we don't need to be perfect to be valuable. A central part of this chapter is the idea that we often prevent ourselves from fully accepting who we are because we are constantly comparing ourselves to others. The philosopher explains that when we live in a state of constant comparison, we diminish our sense of self-worth. We are always measuring ourselves against a standard that may not even reflect our true desires or values. This comparison leads to anxiety, insecurity, and self-doubt, as we never feel good enough. The philosopher encourages the young man to consider that true self-acceptance comes from turning inward, by recognizing and honoring our unique qualities, desires, and values, without relying on others to validate our worth. The philosopher also explains that self-acceptance involves freeing ourselves from the need for approval from others. Many people live their lives seeking validation, whether it's from parents, friends, colleagues, or society at large. The desire for approval can become so overwhelming that it dictates every action and decision, causing individuals to lose sight of their authentic selves. The philosopher asserts that when we stop seeking approval from others, we can finally embrace who we truly are and begin living life on our own terms. This idea is particularly difficult for the young man to accept. He argues that self-acceptance must come through others seeing his value. The philosopher responds by challenging him. If our worth depends on others' perceptions, we give up control over our own happiness and sense of self. True freedom comes from accepting ourselves without needing anyone else's approval. It is about internal validation, where we learn to affirm our worth from within, independent of what others think or how they treat us. A significant turning point in the chapter is the realization that self-acceptance is not about making excuses for ourselves or avoiding personal growth. Accepting ourselves as we are does not mean that we stop striving to improve or evolve. It means recognizing that we are enough, just as we are, even while working toward becoming better versions of ourselves. The philosopher emphasizes that self-acceptance and self-improvement are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist. We can accept our current selves and, at the same time, take responsibility for our growth. The chapter also introduces the idea of life tasks, the different roles we play in life, such as being a partner, a friend, a colleague, or a community member. The philosopher encourages the young man to understand that self-acceptance allows us to embrace each life task fully, without fear of judgment or failure. When we stop fearing rejection or the disapproval of others, we are free to engage in life with confidence and authenticity. By the end of the chapter, the young man begins to see that self-acceptance is not a destination. It is a continuous practice of recognizing and honoring who we are, flaws, and all. It's about giving ourselves the grace to be imperfect while still pursuing growth. Self-acceptance is not a passive state of complacency, but a powerful affirmation of our inherent worth, independent of external circumstances. Through this chapter, the philosopher teaches that the power of self-acceptance lies in freeing ourselves from the burden of constantly seeking approval, comparison, and perfection. It is about embracing who we are right now, accepting our strengths and weaknesses, and taking the courageous step to live authentically. When we accept ourselves fully, we open the door to deeper happiness, personal growth, and the freedom to live life on our own terms. In Night 5, The Path to Happiness and Fulfillment, the 5th chapter of The Courage to be Disliked, the philosopher guides the young man through a transformative discussion on what it means to live a truly fulfilling life. The chapter explores the powerful idea that happiness is not a destination to be reached through external achievements, but a state of being that arises from within. This chapter challenges conventional ideas about success and happiness, offering a profound shift in perspective. Happiness is a choice, not something to be attained through external validation or accomplishment. The philosopher begins by asking the young man what he thinks is necessary for happiness. The young man believes that happiness can only be found through external success, good relationships, career achievements, and the approval of others. However, the philosopher counters this by emphasizing that true happiness comes from within and is rooted in the way we choose to perceive our circumstances and interact with the world. External success may bring temporary pleasure, but it does not guarantee lasting fulfillment. The conversation shifts to the idea that happiness is a byproduct of living authentically, when we align our actions with our true values, desires, and sense of purpose. This authenticity comes from accepting responsibility for our lives, recognizing that we are in control of our choices, and that we have the power to create a life that reflects our true selves. When we stop relying on others' opinions, societal expectations, or external achievements to determine our happiness, we begin to experience a deeper sense of contentment and freedom. The philosopher introduces the concept of contribution as a key element in the path to happiness. Adlerian psychology emphasizes the importance of contributing to the well-being of others and to the community. True fulfillment is not found in self-centered pursuits or in the accumulation of material wealth or status. It is found in how we contribute to the lives of others, whether through acts of kindness, empathy, or service. By focusing on others and offering our talents and abilities to the greater good, we create a sense of meaning and purpose that transcends personal gain. This sense of contribution helps us find deeper satisfaction as it connects us to something greater than ourselves. The young man, still struggling to fully grasp this concept, argues that it's difficult to find happiness when life is filled with obstacles, setbacks, and uncertainty. The philosopher acknowledges that life is not without its challenges, but stresses that our happiness is not dependent on the absence of problems, but on how we choose to respond to them. Life will always present difficulties, but it is through our responses that we create the quality of our lives. Happiness is a choice in how we view and navigate these challenges. Rather than seeing obstacles as barriers, we can view them as opportunities for growth and transformation. A pivotal moment in this chapter occurs when the philosopher explains that happiness does not come from seeking to be loved or admired by others. The desire for recognition can lead to a cycle of dependence on external validation, leaving us vulnerable to disappointment and dissatisfaction. True happiness comes from within, from living in a way that is aligned with our own values without needing approval from others. When we stop seeking love and admiration externally, we free ourselves from the constant need for validation and allow ourselves to experience contentment with who we are. The philosopher also emphasizes that fulfillment is found in the journey, not the destination. Many people mistakenly believe that happiness will come once they reach certain goals, whether it's financial success, career advancement, or achieving personal milestones. However, the philosopher argues that the real joy comes not from achieving these external markers of success, but from the process of living with purpose and authenticity every day. When we focus on the journey itself, on the choices we make, and the way we interact with others and the world, we discover fulfillment in the present moment, rather than postponing our happiness for some future achievement. As the conversation unfolds, the young man begins to understand that happiness is not a pursuit, but a way of being. It is the result of living in alignment with our true selves, contributing to the well-being of others, and choosing to respond to life's challenges with positivity and resilience. Happiness is a natural byproduct of a life lived authentically, where we no longer rely on external circumstances to define our sense of worth or success. The philosopher encourages the young man to embrace the idea that happiness comes from living a life of contribution, self-acceptance, and responsibility. When we take responsibility for our choices, accept ourselves fully, and focus on contributing to the world around us, we naturally create a life of fulfillment and happiness. By the end of the chapter, the young man begins to recognize that the path to happiness is not through external achievements or validation, but through a deep inner transformation. It is found in living authentically, contributing to others, and accepting responsibility for our own happiness. Happiness, the philosopher concludes, is a choice, one that we make every day by aligning our actions with our true values and desires, and by embracing the journey of personal growth and fulfillment. This understanding opens the door to lasting happiness, as the young man realizes that happiness is not something to be sought, it is something to be created from within. As we reach the conclusion of The Courage to be Disliked, it's clear that the central message of the book is about embracing the freedom and power that comes from taking responsibility for our lives, accepting ourselves as we are, and choosing to live authentically. Throughout the journey, we've learned that happiness is not something we attain through external success or validation, but something that arises from within. It's about how we choose to respond to life's challenges and how we align our actions with our true values and desires. One of the most powerful insights from the book is that we are not victims of our past. While our childhood experiences and family dynamics can influence us, they do not define us. We have the power to change our lifestyle, reframe our beliefs, and create a future that reflects our authentic selves. By taking full responsibility for our emotions, actions, and choices, we gain the freedom to live life on our own terms. The book also teaches us the importance of self-acceptance. True happiness comes when we stop seeking approval from others and start affirming our worth from within. We don't need to earn the right to accept ourselves. We are worthy just as we are. Self-acceptance doesn't mean we stop striving for growth or improvement. It means recognizing that we are enough, even as we work to become better versions of ourselves. Another key takeaway is the concept of contribution. True fulfillment comes not from pursuing self-centered goals, but from contributing to the well-being of others. By focusing on how we can add value to the lives of those around us, we find deeper meaning and satisfaction. Happiness is found not in accumulating things or status, but in the impact we have on others and the world. Ultimately, the book encourages us to take responsibility for our lives and stop waiting for external circumstances or others to change. Happiness is a choice, and we have the power to create it by living authentically, accepting ourselves, and contributing to the greater good. This journey of self-discovery is not always easy, but it is the path to true emotional freedom, fulfillment, and personal growth. From this book, we can learn that we hold the key to our own happiness. By understanding that we are in control of our own lives, accepting responsibility for our choices, and embracing our imperfections, we can begin to live more freely and authentically. The courage to be disliked is not about seeking approval from others. It's about having the strength to live a life true to ourselves, regardless of what others think. When we stop seeking validation from the outside and start living from a place of internal authenticity and self-acceptance, we unlock the potential for a deeply fulfilling and meaningful life. And that wraps up our summary of The Courage to be Disliked here on Olivia's Summaries. We've covered the essential teachings of the book, the power of taking responsibility for our lives, the freedom that comes from self-acceptance, and the true path to happiness, which is about living authentically and contributing to others. Remember, happiness isn't something we find by seeking approval or external success. It's a choice, one that comes from embracing who we are, taking responsibility for our actions, and living according to our own values. If this video resonated with you, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more book summaries that help you on your journey of personal growth and self-discovery. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, the courage to be yourself is the key to living a truly fulfilled life.